Welcome back to the Wacky Wonderful Wiseworks podcast. All you guys, gals, geeks, and goofballs, my throat hurts.
Your throat hurts. Do you think you're coming down with something?
I've got whatever Ethan has, which it seems like a chest cold.
Oh boy,
Yep.
I'm coming off of one, so me and you are going to be coughing.
Yep, it's fun.
I'm going to try to mute myself as much as possible for the cough. I wish all the fancy podcasts have cough buttons now.
Yeah.
We need to install one of those. It's
yeah,
like,
there's a virtual. There's one right there on the screen. So
well, you have to get your mouse and you have to click it. Whereas I could just hit a button right here on the side that just says cough, and then I go, and no one hears me.
Yeah. And
I guess this is my podcast. Then I'll take it away. Just give me the topics and I'll give my opinions.
No, we can talk. We just need to not overdo it.
Not overdo it. Yeah, Wyatt's not going to have his long ramblings tonight because his voice won't allow. So
Yeah.
that's a positive for all you listeners out there. Wyatt has a tendency to just share his opinions nonstop, so he'll be shutting up a little bit more this evening or today, however you whenever you listen to this podcast. When do you guys think people usually listen to this podcast? It's one thing that we haven't really considered in a while.
I mean, I personally, I know I don't typically, if it's a hour long thing or an hour and a half long thing, I don't usually drop in on a live. I'll usually go back for the replay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
people aren't sticking
control
around for the live usually. They're probably on the replay.
Mostly so that I can skip forward if I need to,
Yeah.
or hold the button down and have the people speak faster, just to sort of get through something I'm not vibing with or I'm bored with or I want to get past.
Dude, my YouTube is the Wild West right now.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
so?
so YouTube started doing this thing where they recommend smaller channels occasionally. And so new channels and smaller channels are getting exposure like they've never had before. All right.
Yeah.
Right now. It's happening right now. Like on the homepage where most people click on a video where they're looking to see what YouTube recommends them, there's actually videos in there that have like 50 views, you know what I mean? Or 10 views. So YouTube's actually serving up content that doesn't have a lot of exposure to people. With that change and also my watch history, my YouTube homepage is wild these days. It's got to be nuts for most people.
Mine's probably primarily podcasts. I listen to a ton of podcasts on Spotify and then YouTube. That's all.
Mine's mostly movie commentary.
That's it. That's all you listen to.
I mostly listen to movie commentary, breakdown videos. A
lot of Gary.
I don't listen to like a lot of Gary, but anytime he's got like a real BBC coming out or a Nerdrotic Nooner, or he's on with Drinker or Mahler or whoever, I've been hitting up the EFAPs,
Right.
because they are incredibly long. There's a ton. Sometimes they'll be 10 hours long, and so I'll start an episode and I've got what I can listen to for the rest of the day.
What do you guys, Joshua? Do you know who Chris Gore is?
Chris,
I know Wyatt does.
I don't think so.
Wyatt, what do you think about this guy, Chris Gore? Do you think he's like, I know he's deep into the culture of filmmaking and everything. He's very much an enthusiast, but as a commentist, so like he's been on YouTube creating content for a long time, but he has not had a serious pop off outside of anything he's done with Gary. So what do you think about Chris Gore as a personality? Because I don't know how to pin him down. I'm like, I respect this guy's opinions because he feels like he's pretty knowledgeable, but at the same time, I look at him and I hear him talk and I'm just kind of like, this guy, I respect him, but I don't know how much I take him seriously.
So Chris, I know of the people who are out there doing movie reviews, Chris is watching the most movies.
Probably.
Chris watches at least a movie
name?
a day.
Chris Gore. Chris
Gore.
Gore.
Gore. Chris watches at least a movie a day. He's reviewing movies all the time. He's been in the industry worked with big names, been on Attack of the Show, G4, the one that collapsed after trying to come back fairly recently.
Yeah.
But I think his opinions on some movies are a little bit different than a lot of the people I listen to on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's honest, I think. I think he's very honest. And when you can tell when he really dislikes something, he's very, very outspoken about it.
Mm-hmm.
But he seems to be a genuine like reviewer.
I feel that way
I don't
too.
agree with all of his takes. I think I think a lot of them is not going to be my cup of tea, but
yeah, I think there's something also I don't necessarily, which this could be hypocritical of me to say, but when someone's been doing a very specific thing for a long time, a part of me doesn't trust if they don't have a large following yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure. And I don't know why that is, but I think there's just such an effort that we make to try to do well with our content that if someone has been doing it like 4 times as long as us and they're still struggling to get exposure,
yeah,
I'm just kind of like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? It's the same with that one dude. Who's that one dude that's like a filmmaker who wears his hat backwards all the time? He used to be really big, but he lost weight. What's his name? You don't really like him that much. He's been doing movie podcasts and making movies like Tusk and handful of other kind of like comedy horrors that he does. You know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about.
You're saying he doesn't have a lot of following. You don't trust him because of that. But when I typed in Chris Gore, is what you said, I found a movie reviewer guy. But I click on the channel, and he's got 728,000. So 700,000 subscribers. That's not small.
Okay. How much does Film Threat have at the time? Right now? Film Threat has 129,000 subscribers. All right.
Yeah.
I think what you're looking at is Film Courage, Joshua.
Yes, that is what I'm looking at.
And
that's the only thing that comes up when I type his name.
He's associated with Film Courage, but I don't think he's not the only personality that has sold that channel. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about Film Threat. Film Threat is his channel, and
he's still got still that channel's got 130.
He's got 5,000 videos on Film Threat. Okay, and the oldest was from 6 years ago. That's not terribly long, actually.
Yeah, I don't think he started his YouTube channel all that long ago. Like I said, he's mostly been working in the industry. And he's like a known reviewer in the industry. He gets invited to premieres and red carpet events and things like that.
But the guy I was talking about that I said is Kevin Smith.
Oh, the one who wears the jersey? Yeah, that guy's a retard. I hate him.
But his look, I don't want to just go on a slam, but he's been doing YouTube content for a long time as well. And his channel, let's see, Kevin Smith, he gets like an average of like 10,000 views a video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know we're not anywhere near that, but when these guys have been doing this for so long, I'm just kind of like, what's the problem here?
Kevin Smith is a hack. And I think in the early days, he was pretty good. Nowadays he's washed up. He's a hack. And Chris Gore, I would say Chris is maybe a bit washed up, but he's not a hack. He's honest. He's genuine.
Yeah,
he's a real person. He's not trying to pander to any sort of a Hollywood politics or anything. And I think that could be a big reason why he hasn't grown a ton in the past 6 years is that, you know, he's not people who kind of fence sit and people who kind of just tell you what you want to hear grow pretty quick on YouTube because they're easy listen.
Right. Well, sort of. They're easy listen by people who are not very loyal followers,
or
right?
people who are looking for pretty surface level. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Well, it's like the reaction. It's the reaction channel phenomenon.
Well, no, it's looking for surface level like opinion validation.
Sure.
Right? Where say I like the Rings of Power, right? And I go and I look up a Rings of Power review. And I see Gary and I see Mahler and I see Chris and I'm like, they're talking
They don't
bad.
like
They're
it.
being mean. They're mean and they swear sometimes. But then I see I don't know, Chris Stuckman.
Okay.
And he gets on there and he's like, this was a pretty good show. You could see that there was attention to detail in the costumes. All of the actors seemed to really do a good job.
Yeah.
And you basically, that's what you get. Look at the visuals.
Yeah.
This is fun. That. It's fantasy.
But
that's what you're looking for. Those channels grow quick.
Those channels become the minority when something very bad comes out. Mm-hmm. So like Screen Crush, he was the only channel on YouTube that was praising The Acolyte. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the only one. Yeah. And because he is a bit of a he's a shill. He wants to be in the in crowd.
And if those people get any kind of opinion about a movie that's somewhat negative, they give that opinion in a video, their fans turn on them. It's wild. They're like, hey, I didn't
sign up for your opinions.
I didn't like Deadpool and Wolverine.
Sure.
Because I thought it had storytelling and narrative issues and assassinated the movies by, discounting the previous movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's. I mean, I like Chris. I like Chris Gore. I think he's genuine.
I'll have to check him out and see. I don't know Chris Gore I don't know him at all. So
you need to get back. You need to get into the movie review space, Joshua. I feel like that's one area you don't delve too deep. You're not much of a delve master.
I don't care, and I feel like I want to come into our recording with a fresh mind, and so if I'm watching other people, and I need a fresh mind coming in here, so I don't watch it. So
I like the multiple opinions. Because I especially like EFAP, they get on there and they'll have 7 different people as they're breaking down something like the one I listened to recently was Suicide Squad, not the crappy one with Jared Leto, but the one James Gunn did.
Yeah.
And they're talking about it, and they like a lot of the movie, and they're breaking down character stuff. But
the second one,
yeah, the second one, but they're not afraid to be like, clearly, here's the plot issues, here's this issue, here's this issue, and then they'll just straight up argue about stuff like no, and you'll get 30 minutes of 2 people arguing about a point because they disagree. And I enjoy that kind of stuff.
Can we take a step back of what you just said? I agree. The first one's not great. I'm not defending the first one at all. Yeah. But the second one was terrible too. It's a terrible.
The second one has really bad. The second one has really bad plot stuff, but I like the character work.
I thought all the characters.
I like
the
like character work, especially for
like
they
freaking had Pete Davidson in that movie.
Yeah, he wasn't a character. We're talking about the character, the Suicide Squad, the characters that are the main characters, not the ones that die in the beginning.
It was a terrible movie. That was a terrible movie.
It's pretty bad. It's not my favorite. I don't
Better than the
agree with
first one.
I don't agree with a lot of
No.
their points.
If I was
But
gonna,
I agree with their points about character work. They clearly took time to do character work in that movie, as opposed to the first movie where they did nothing. None
Yes.
of the characters were anything except maybe Deadshot.
I
Yes,
am not,
Deadshot was all right.
by saying this statement, I am not defending the first one because as movie goes, it's a terrible movie itself.
Okay, but say your statement.
Out of the two, I would watch the first one over the second one.
That's BS.
No.
It's garbage.
That's a bad take.
At least with the second one, you get character work.
But out of the both movies, I would still watch the first one over the second one because they were both garbage. They've not made a good Suicide Squad movie.
I think the second one has at least character stuff. And if you can tell me like why it doesn't have character stuff, I'll agree with you.
I would have to watch it again. I know what my opinion is of that movie, but specifically for the characters of like, oh, maybe they did give a little bit of character development here and like that. I don't want to go into it because it's been too long to be like, okay, maybe they did give some good characters. But I know my opinion of that movie because I remember watching it.
But see, I think this is where the advantage comes in the watching movie review content is you refresh your memory on stuff and you can hear other people's thoughts and opinions and takes on different things. And that way you're not going off of, I have this sort of foggy memory of this movie that I had one opinion about 3 or 4 years ago. You know, you can sort of expand your scope. And that's mostly why I listen to stuff like movie stuff specifically.
I kind of dive into movie stuff pretty at length, primarily because I enjoy keeping a pulse on what the internet thinks about specific pieces of content. Not because I'm trying to shape my own opinion, of course not, because I get varieties, but like I'll usually be like, all right, what does the primary kind of like podcasting kind of crowd feel about this? What does the reaction crowd kind of feel like this? What does the breakdown crowd feel about this? And I get a good sense of what the culture on the internet feels about a specific movie, show, piece of film news, what's upcoming. And right now I think I'm starting to ramp up on interest level to see how people are feeling about the Harry Potter series because there's more stuff that's coming out about that. They're getting ready to cast the kids, and so I'm interested to see as the people that are talking about it. It's like, what are we feeling? How are we feeling about J.K. Rowling in 2024? You know
I think as important as the commentators themselves, because I'll go to whatever Penguin Zero or Moist Critical, I'll go to his channel and hear his take on something and look at the comments. And I'll go to my movie reviewer guys that I listen to, I'll look at the comments, and the comments are where you're going to see the most equilibrium. Because if they're talking about a movie that they're like, oh, this movie sucked, but general audiences liked it, you'll see that reflected in the comments. Or and if somebody like Charlie has a bad take, you'll see that reflected in the comments. They're like, all right, I like you, but this kind of sucks, and I think that's really interesting, and that's how you can kind of see how people are feeling.
Now, I know he's a little bit of I know you haven't I think he used to be with Collider or something. And I know you're not a big fan, Wyatt, but I have seen him be a lot more critical of stuff lately.
Who?
Which surprised me. John Campea.
Yeah, yuck. What a shill.
He is a shill, but I've seen, as of late, he's become a lot more critical of stuff.
Well, he's had to because Robert Meyer Burnett's not there anymore.
So he's playing devil's advocate a little bit, or at least
filling Robert Meyer Burnett is an actual movie reviewer guy, and was able to give that sort of opposite opinion. where Campia was like, I can be positive about everything, and Robert can come in with like the facts and logic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now that Robert's doing his own thing individually, I think Campia is having to actually have opinions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna get to our first segment?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We may never get there.
Eventually. It's just going to be more movie talk. This
20
episode is movie talk.
3 minutes.
I hope you guys know
minutes.
that the two segments that I have here are both movie talk segments.
I'm okay with
well,
that.
that's fine. Let's talk about these movies. Let's see what
I want to talk
you got.
about movies.
Okay.
And these are the movies we're talking about.
That's a lot of movies. That's a lot
That's
of
a
lot of the
Marvel. I knew you were going to be
movies.
talking about Marvel and Disney.
Talking about Marvel movies. I'm not talking about Disney. Well, we might talk about Disney later on.
I don't see how you can avoid that topic.
Yeah. But mostly, I kind of have a question regarding pre-Infinity War Endgame movies.
Okay.
Joe and I had a fairly frequent argument back in the day of the Marvel movies, and he was negative towards them, didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. Well before Infinity War.
And your opinion was that they.
I think they lost it right around Ant-Man. The first one, and I think that Age of Ultron might be the big. It was fine. Age of Ultron was fine, but I noticed slipping, and everything before that I kind of quantify as pretty enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. What about Guardians of the Galaxy?
I enjoy. There's spots, right? There's spots. Order? Infinity War was good. All right. No. Infinity War was good.
They are in order. Okay, no. So I'm just as a recall and to refresh Joseph's memory of what he said, I remember having a conversation with him about Iron Man 3 and Thor Dark World. Mm-hmm. So that was where it was. It wasn't Ant-Man. It was a little before that.
Well, I enjoyed most of them. It was Iron Man 3. It was Thor Dark World I didn't care for. I was relatively fine with Iron Man 3, sort of.
So if I think most of these before the, would you say, Endgame?
Yeah.
Before Endgame, most of them are good. I would say there's like 3, maybe 4 that I could cherry pick and be like, yeah, these weren't great movies. They felt like they were just trying to cop out something to get to the next Avenger movie. Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed Endgame and those Avenger movies. Those were probably my favorite.
Were you leading to, Wyatt?
So my question was, looking back on these series of movies, where the movies themselves had pretty clear superhero characters, villains, story arcs, and tying everything together, and had a more serious tone to them, and I would say more heart to them than the newer ones. Has your opinion on like these movies as a whole, right, as a collection, has it changed in the of what is interesting content? Because before you were like, I don't like it. I think it's dumb. It's not sustainable. You were right. It wasn't sustainable.
Correct.
It's going to get too big. They can't keep adding new stuff. You were right. It did. And they started to fail. But this in its own bubble.
Yeah.
Where do you sit with this cinematic universe?
With like the before it started going, like before like Infinity War? If you
consider Endgame like the last movie.
If I consider Endgame the last movie, if they actually stopped it there, I would probably eventually look back with nostalgia. Even the ones I didn't like. I didn't like the third Thor movie. Was it the third or the fourth?
What, Ragnarok?
No, Ragnarok was third. I didn't like the second Thor movie.
Yeah,
Dark
I think
World.
a lot of people had a hard time with that one.
I was okay with Iron Man 3.
I would actually rather watch Thor over Iron Man 3.
And then, but they came back with Civil War, Captain America Civil War, and I thought that was really strong. They had Guardians of the Galaxies. I never liked it as much as Joshua, not anywhere close. But I was like, it's enjoyable. And then I liked Ultron somewhat. And then once Ant-Man came out, I felt like it devolved into something that wasn't good. I mean, I know Civil War came after Ant-Man, but I'm just saying, like, it just became.
I don't know your issue with Ant-Man.
By time Ragnarok was around, there was a very strong collection of bad ones in my mind, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say Doctor Strange. I would say Doctor Strange. I would actually say Age of Ultron is one of the weaker movies, along with Iron Man 3 and Dark World. But I don't know your issue with Ant-Man.
I think here's where ultimately I think this is where it falls off. When they started getting more and more niche with the heroes they're bringing in.
Okay. I
think that's where I think it's where they started going downhill.
Right. Why is niche bad?
Niche is bad because there's not as broad of an audience for a specific comic book fans, right? Okay. Comic book fans enjoyed Ant-Man.
Right.
And I'm
asking what's wrong with the movie.
What's wrong with the movie?
Yeah.
I think it was ultimately uninteresting. I think the character was uninteresting. Right. I think the premise of a suit that shrinks you down is uninteresting. I don't think it's that strong for a superhero concept. I think it's starting to hit the fringes of kind of the crazy ideas that the comic books delved into. I think we lost touch with reality.
I'm going to push back. I don't think a suit that shrinks and grows is nearly as unbelievable as like Hulk or Thor or Iron Man.
No, I don't think that it's unbelievable, the character, but I think those weren't strong movies. I think the first Ant-Man, and it has nothing to do with the character.
Let's break this down for what you just said, because what you just said is fundamentally incorrect. All right. Okay. So we are talking about So let's start with the obvious. Captain America. He has a science experiments done on him that allows him to have supernatural strength, speed, and the ability to do abnormal things. And he becomes a super soldier. All right. That is a scientific, unbelievable, but scientific process that makes sense. It's very similar with Hulk, right? It is a very similar process. It's a scientific accident. All right. Thor is from another planet in the far reaches of the universe. And so he is a god character. So as much as he's disconnected from reality, it's still based in some form of believability. Then you have Iron Man, who's the ultimate believability. If you can just craft a suit that works to that has the ability to give you essentially superpowers, any man can become the superpower, and his power was his ability to do that, his brain. All right. Then we hit Ant-Man that defies any kind of logic, that it's not a scientific experiment gone wrong to allow people to Hulk out. It's not something that's like a scientific correct experiment like Captain America that worked correctly. It is literally a suit that goes into your physiology and allows you to shrink like your flesh and blood. It disconnects you from any kind of grounded, believable nature, and it loses you. It just loses you. All right. Honestly, I think that someone who has wizard powers, as crappy as Doctor Strange is as a movie, it's more in line with the believability nature because you're dealing with magic than a suit that could turn a regular person into something tiny. I think that's incredibly unbelievable. I think that's
insane. If you think magic works, but tiny guy doesn't work.
I'm saying it is within the realm of believability more than taking a normal guy and having a suit that can shrink you down.
It's not the suit.
Clearly have never seen
the Pym particles. which
The
is
pivot-
a
never seen
Okay,
Honey,
but
I Shrunk
discovery.
it's the same. It's the same premise. It is a unbelievable feat of science that is so far disconnected
just
from a
like the
character
Hulk,
like Iron Man.
just like Tony Stark, just like Captain America.
No, because
just
they
like
were
stuff in
fundamentally
Guardians of the
changed
Galaxy,
forever.
just like Age of Ultron, just
No.
like Wolverine's claws,
Hulk
just
and
like
Captain America
Shield.
was fundamentally changed for the rest of his life. Like this is something that does not hold any kind of logic to it. There's no like train of logic that can make my mind have an enjoying process, suspending belief. Yes, suspending belief. But as far as to say that the Ant-Man phenomenon works and is believable in any capacity.
Okay.
I think that Hulk, it's a scientific experiment that went wrong, and he is fundamentally changed forever. He has this Hulk out alter ego that will stay with him forever. Captain America cannot reverse the strength of his science experiment. Wolverine, he was born with a specific mutant ability, and then a science experiment changed him to where he becomes more powerful, but ultimately is that way for the rest of his life. Like he cannot change that. This Ant-Man thing is just like, it's just science. Like the only thing when it comes to suits that works for me is Iron Man.
This
like
is
Iron
a
Man and
world.
Bible Man works. You know what I mean?
It's not a suit. It's a
with alien
particle. It's a particle.
Superheroes like X-Men.
We're exiting
mutants.
reality in my mind.
You
We're
have
exiting reality with the Ant-Man.
Yes.
like Tony Stark, and you don't think that they can make a guy small. I think that's unfar-fetched.
See,
now,
yeah.
yes.
Well, the
this
same
is
thing
a
is with like Endgame. I was super super annoyed with the time travel aspect
I
because
was too.
that's another element of leaving the grounded foundation that we can easily suspend our belief for superheroes into something that's too far reaching. That's what I think.
So. I would agree with you with that. I don't think Ant-Man is a reach as far as believability.
I think it is for me, and I think it is for a lot of people.
I think the box office probably tells a different story on that one, because the first Ant-Man was pretty well received. People liked it. The second Ant-Man is where you come into a little bit of an issue, because that one is not a good movie. And the thing with the first Ant-Man is it follows the formula. He trains, he gets a suit, he learns his powers, he fights the bad guy. It's fun. It all wraps up pretty nicely.
I'm more on Wyatt and saying like, yes, you can have an Ant-Man. I think Ant-Man was probably the weakest out of all these movies.
It forgettable?
It was a terrible movie.
Was it forgettable?
Yes.
Was it terrible? No.
I'm not saying it was a terrible movie. I'm saying it was the start of the downward spiral that has become Marvel with the multiverse.
I would say,
and the
I would
crazy
rather watch
different
Captain Marvel than Ant-Man.
I said no.
Josh was trolling.
No, I would rather watch Captain Marvel than Ant-Man.
I would say Ant-Man is the start of the formula where people really noticed. They were like, oh, all the movies are sort of kind of following this formula. And so I would say it's more forgettable than anything else.
Okay. But
a terrible movie is like The Room.
Okay.
You know?
Yes.
Or
example.
any number of B movies are terrible movies. I would say the worst that this has is it's forgettable.
So I'm gonna take it a different direction to expand on my point. So Guardians of the Galaxy is a good, fun movie. All right. It has good, engaging characters that are fun. However, I think it was also adding to the problem that I am trying to represent here. Because up until now, the only thing that was not grounded in Earth, believable reality with superheroes was Thor. And that was more ethereal, supernatural kind of style. All right.
Not necessarily, because
they were like friggin' aliens.
Yeah,
dude.
the whole Avengers movie was about aliens.
It was
but
aliens.
it made the universe feel vast. It made it feel very disconnected. And so it was a very special being, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was able to not lose myself with the narrative of Thor. When we hit Guardians of the Galaxy, it turned the universe into this wacky, unbelievable place that ripped me out of the believable Earth narrative that birthed Captain America and Iron Man, right? And
Right.
it added to the problem, and it goes along. It's the same chapter of the same book that I'm saying Ant-Man did for me. All right. The only thing that I don't harp on Guardians of the Galaxy for is because it was fun. It was a fun movie with fun characters. But it ultimately accomplishes the same thing that I'm talking about, that it removes you from the world that you felt like was being set up for you.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question that I'm going to ask you to suspend your disbelief.
Okay.
Here. Okay. Suspend your disbelief by ignoring your disbelief.
Okay.
Right? As a movie series, right? In continuity, do the movies feel like they work within a story?
No.
All of them together? Is that what you're saying?
Together.
No.
I would say yeah. For the
Not
most
all
part,
of them.
As a whole.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say yes, excluding like Hulk, which kind of they were still trying to figure it out during Hulk. And
but even in that one, Tony Stark's in that.
Yeah.
So
no,
that
I think Ragnarok is like the biggest problem with what you're asking. If I suspend my disbelief, and do they all work together as a coherent story inside of a universe? I would say probably all of them, but Ragnarok came out of left field so far that I think it doesn't fit. Ragnarok does not fit in the same way that Love and Thunder does not fit. And that is Taika Waititi.
That's Taika Waititi's fault.
Yes. It doesn't fit.
That's because the Thor the Dark World was a little bit it seemed a little bit dark. It seemed a little bit too emotional, and people were like, Thor is a much, more colorful story than this in his comics. There's always, jokes and it's colorful. It's fun.
Yes.
And so Taika Waititi took that idea and he turned it into Thor Ragnarok, which can be funny and it can be fun, but I think that one takes away a lot of the seriousness that we got in some of the other.
Well, what the foundation of this was supposed to be, right? Which was supposed to be what Jon Favreau was building with Iron Man and these first films. Yes, and the first Thor, I don't think anything's gonna beat as far as movies that Thor is in. I think the very first one, yes, it's different than the comics. I understand that. But I think it worked so well with Iron Man and Captain America that it didn't skip a beat. You know what I mean? And
I would say I think the downfall of the quality in how they write dialogue started with Guardians of the Galaxy, because James Gunn takes a very jokey, fun, kind of interesting thing.
I think it was a little before that.
It works with Tony Stark's dialogue works for him.
Yes.
Yeah, but
that's fine,
okay, think of the third Iron Man. As much as we'll accept the third Iron Man movie, just think of like that little kid and the dialogue he has with the kid. It doesn't feel...
That's not anywhere close to Guardians dialogue.
It feels like we're in the same universe with Iron Man 3.
It's not close, but it's still starting to slip there.
Guardians dialogue. I'm not talking about. Tony Stark is a big influence on the dialogue and how he quips and says things, right? And the problem is later in the latter half of the movies, everybody has to sort of sound like Tony, and Guardians added to that issue of everybody's got to be dropping jokes. Everybody's got to be, but if you watch carefully in Guardians, it's more reserved. Not everybody's dropping jokes all the time. It's different. And then the music element made it even more kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But that one still had emotionality and heart to it. I think once we get to especially Ragnarok,
we just transcended everything that was being done before.
It every movie was doing. Now we're all Guardians movies.
Well, okay. Did I see the list here? I'm starting to question if this is the correct order of them. But because I thought Spider-Man: Homecoming came out after Ragnarok. Because I remember a series of movies like Ragnarok that I was not enjoying. And then when the first Spider-Man: Homecoming came out, I was like, we're back, right? I really enjoyed the first Spider-Man.
I don't know. I don't think it matters a ton where those two are because they're both after Ultron, or they're both after Civil War.
Okay.
And they're both before Infinity War.
So on this list, if I'm going to say what is like an actually bad movie, okay, out of this list, because a lot of these I don't consider bad movies. Believe it or not, I look at the first Black Panther and I don't call that a bad movie, a bad hero movie. The bad movies I would say on this list that we're looking at right now is Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange.
And Ant-Man 2.
And Ant-Man 2, yes. But yeah. I think actually bad movies, like they're so far, they're so out of place. They shouldn't even be on the same board as some of these. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I would say Black Panther as well. I think that one's bad.
Look, it's not great, but it is not like it can be enjoyable. Black Panther was
I'm sure it can be, but The Room can be enjoyable too.
I
think that one's pretty bad.
I think Black Panther there was stuff surrounding the movie of culture stuff that, in my opinion, made it I don't want to say worse movie, but I'm going to say that
you were annoyed. You were annoyed.
Yeah, I was annoyed by the movie only because of the culture around the movie. It had nothing to do with the movie itself.
I'm not talking about the culture. I'm talking about the movie itself. I think is a bad movie.
Well, the end fight was horrible with like the rubber characters
and the CGI was bad, and the logic were pretty bad. They make Wakanda really kind of a sucky country.
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning of the film, Wakanda's kind of cool, and then it becomes less cool the longer the film goes on.
No. They are always not cool.
No, the beginning of Black Panther, Wakanda is interesting and intriguing, and as the film goes on, it becomes less so.
How so?
So I think it's because it's shaded in mystery. It's the first Black Panther. It's the first time we're going to Wakanda, as far as I remember. And the nature of the technology, the nature of a hidden city and a hidden land, and everything just was. It just kind of felt fresh, but not that idea that I'm saying where it leaves reality. You know what I mean? As the film goes on, it does that. But at the beginning of the film, it actually holds a bit of that Marvel Universe believability.
I like Hidden Kingdom. I like Hidden Kingdom and interesting technology. The issue is where they start adding their logic to it, which is Hidden Kingdom with super technology. But they're also like super like egalitarian people. They're extremely kind, and everybody's super smart, and everybody's super happy, and they don't care about anybody else but themselves. Right?
Well, yeah. When you get into who they are as a people,
and I think part of the point of the movie was we need to have a hand in the outside world, but their technology is so far beyond what anybody else can do aside from maybe Tony Stark that the impact that they could have is more than just, buying some buildings in the projects.
This might start an argument, especially in the comments, and I'm going to tread lightly here. I think, how do I say this in the right
Joshua
way?
says he's about to tread lightly, and he says the most racist thing that we've ever heard.
I haven't said it yet.
You don't have to preface your thoughts. Just say the racism.
I think when Hollywood tries to show us a version of Black culture, it's always not quite right.
Yeah, I know what you're meaning. I
had the same problem with the Bob Marley movie. It was like, it was a good movie, but there was something, it was like they were trying to hide his faults so that it didn't feel like it was, a movie needs its downs so it can have its highs. It needs to be that emotional roller coaster. And I think when Hollywood shows us Black culture on film, they show us such a high concept of
it's a flowery version of it because they're a minority and it's like a film made for minorities, so they're afraid to bring out any negative connotation with the people in the story.
But contrasting you don't have your highs without your lows. You need some of the lows to have a good movie.
Contrasting that with Tony Stark, he's a narcissist party boy who doesn't care about anyone but himself, and he has to be redeemed. Like, that's not a positive attribute of his personality. He has to be redeemed from that side of him. So you're 100% right, Joshua. They're scared to lean into negatives about a minority group. That's what Hollywood is. Because they feel like they are perpetuating stereotypes, but really all that it's doing is telling a human story. But whenever it's the same thing, we're getting the exact same thing with women, right? Okay, here's a great example. Christian movies, really bad Christian movies, are almost across the board hated because Christians don't know how to write stories. So they usually create a Jesus character that does no wrong and doesn't have to do anything, and everybody around them is oppressing them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they have to try to find their way through this oppressive world. And that's just a dull story. That's not good storytelling. It's the same thing that Hollywood's doing with minority groups, with women, with Black people, and with other minorities. They are abandoning storytelling history and storytelling quality for the sake of not trying to paint any negative connotation onto these characters, but at the same time saying they made a film for minorities. So that's why women in movies are always the key to everything. That's why they're always perfect. That's why if they do anything bad, the story usually turns to make it seem like, oh, they were just reacting in a bad way to a situation that was ultimately caused by a bad man, right? That's the point of Hollywood right now.
Is the most powerful superhero of all time.
Well, she is in the comics, which I think that's a problem with the comics, because whenever you make a character that's that powerful, then it's just like, why are we even telling the story? She could just nuke a planet. You know what I mean?
She's Superman. Yeah.
Like, why do we even tell the story?
So it's sterile morality is what it is. And sterile morality is not interesting.
Not interesting at all. Okay, let me tell you a character who's very interesting. Freaking Thanos. Thanos was very interesting because he had a righteous calling that was ultimately evil, right?
And wrong.
But his foundation of his thought process caused you to think. You know what I mean? Which makes him a good character.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can see what you're talking about with Thanos, but I personally find Thanos stuff boring to me. I don't know why. I don't know what it is with Thanos that
Thanos
makes
might
it
be
boring.
one of the most interesting characters next to Tony Stark in the cinematic universe. In the Marvel,
he's boring on screen though. He's
it's Steve. Steve is Tony's rival for interesting.
I'm not saying the rival. I'm saying
Steve
one
Rogers.
of the. He might be the most interesting character next to Iron Man.
Oh, just
well-written, interesting character on screen. Steve is just he has his ups and downs, but he's a little too good. He's a little less interesting because his moral compass is a little too strong. You know what I mean? That's the problem with Captain America.
Maybe
it's you want the moral conundrums.
What
Tony Stark was an embodiment of a moral conundrum, and the same was with Thanos. That's what I think.
What's our to encapsulate kind of Marvel before the Avenger movies? If you want to say that, that's what we're talking about. What are we concluding here?
I mean, I wasn't really concluding, because here's the other movies.
Yeah.
And I want you to just look at these long and hard, right? And wish yourself back to the previous one.
For the audios, let me just name them off. You got Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, which wasn't bad.
Fun.
Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. I can't believe we went to the theater and watched that one.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Thor, Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever, The Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Quantumania, and then we don't have Blade yet.
Yeah, and then there's Deadpool 3 and Captain America 4, which is coming out fairly soonish.
Which is not going to have Steve Rogers.
Right. No, it's the... What is his name? What are we calling
Black
him?
America. Black African American.
African American.
You can't call him Black America.
That's what he is.
African American.
Captain African American.
Captain Snickers.
No,
oh my gosh.
Ours were funny, dude. Looking at these, I would say you have one interestingly fairly good movie in Spider-Man No Way Home.
The second would be Guardians 3.
The second would be Guardians 3, which has lots and lots of issues.
I really didn't like Spider-Man No Way Home. The only reason why it was good
fan service,
because of the cameos in it. It was so full of cameos. People wanted to see all the bad guys and all the Spider-Man, and that was cool, but it was cool for 5 minutes. The movie was a terrible movie.
I thought some of the writing for the villains and the Spider-Man was really good.
The Spider-Man interacting with each other was really good. It was. I liked sense.
I thought getting more Green Goblin. You can't go wrong with that. Every scene he's in, he's in charge. He's winning.
Great choice to redeem Dr. Octavius.
Yes,
and great choice to make the antagonist the Green Goblin.
Yeah, because
brilliant choice.
He's the one. Part. He's the one really that you can't redeem. The issues were that like they brought in Sandman, who by the end of Spider-Man 3 wasn't a villain,
right?
Yeah,
and didn't die.
Also, they brought in the least interesting. Like the worst villain in Spider-Man history, in my opinion, which is the Electro guy.
I thought they made Electro. I thought they did. I thought they gave him a little bit of justice in this, and made
a
him
little bit of justice. But he was more interesting than he was in his movie with Andrew Garfield.
I think that was the point. Was to give some of these characters do them a little bit of justice.
Yeah.
And the important thing to remember is that. In this movie, the cameos prop up the Tom Holland Spider-Man. They never tear him down.
Right. Even the other Spider-Men.
Yeah, the goal is they build each other up and they never tear each other down. A lot of these other movies are simply boring or bad.
Yes.
Eternals, boring and bad.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi, bad. I wouldn't necessarily say boring, but definitely bad.
That's another huge debate we've had. Freaking that dude, what was his weapon that I harped on and I couldn't get over?
Shang-Chi? Oh,
the guy with the arm?
Was it a retractable blade?
Yeah.
The whole thing. I can't get over that.
Tony has nanotech.
I cannot get over that.
Tony has nanotech.
Yeah, Tony does because he's smart enough to figure it out.
Tony
literally shoots a laser out of his wrist.
Tony's character is that he is smarter than everyone else, so he can figure out the tech. I don't like
they had time
street
travel
having the same tech Tony Stark has.
By the
In
time Shang-Chi comes out, Iron Man and the Avengers and
is
aliens,
irrelevant.
No. Listen to me. And aliens have been in this world for like 10 or 15 years at this point. You don't think that thugs and especially rich thugs like the 10 Rings are going to get their hands on some pretty high-tech alien tech?
I think that they would, and it would look more like we saw in Spider-Man Homecoming, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of bumbly. It works, but it ultimately feels like some thugs got a hold of technology they don't fully understand. Shang-Chi, that was just a street bad guy who had
He was not
a
a street bad guy. He was
he was.
an employee of the 10 Rings, who's like one of the most powerful groups.
I hated it.
Why wouldn't he have
much.
pretty high-tech stuff?
This is what I'm talking about. Marvel leaves the believable nature of the foundation it was built on. It started with Ant-Man, and it kind of started with Guardians of the Galaxies by expanding the universe, which is ultimately necessary for freaking Thanos, but did a disservice to the IP as a whole, all right? And Shang-Chi and all of these movies build on that problem. Their foundation is the problem.
Yeah, no. That's not an issue. But arguing that a knife can't come out of a relatively short area, whereas Hulk can just generate mass.
It wasn't a knife.
We've had this argument.
Generate mass.
Let's be done with it. We've had this argument.
They attempt to explain why Hulk is an anomaly and why it works. This guy is just some random bad guy to fill space in a movie, so it doesn't make sense why he would have this technology.
And he has a little bit of high quality tech. He's not like shooting knives out of all of his orifices or anything. He's got one thing with a machete.
I am not the only one who feels this way.
What about
the lowest issue? Okay.
What about the guy on X-Men that shoots those like spiral knife things at
he's a mutant. He's growing those.
X-Men is a different...
No, they grow out of his hand.
He's growing them.
And then he's
growing them. He's a mutant. That's different.
X-Men's a different beast because it's a different level of believability it requires for the audience, okay?
It's in the same universe though.
Is it? I guess now it is.
Technically, sort of.
Yes.
But
the mutant universe is different than the Marvel universe. It just is.
Yeah.
What? Deadpool crossovers them, but it's barely different, right? The Earth of the X-Men is different than the Earth of Iron Man and Captain America.
I don't know.
It is.
We should thank the Patreon.
Well, hold on. Let's
Josh was so done with this.
Well, I mean, if you don't have anything interesting to add, that's
then don't say anything at all.
Move on.
What does Grandma?
The ultimate question is: looking at this list and looking at the films that have come out, do you long for that previous list?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Yeah,
it was a fun time in cinema.
It definitely was.
At the beginning, it was.
I was having fun all the way through.
I was having fun until about Ant-Man.
We got to Ant-Man 2, and I was like,
dude, how many films extra did it take for you to get off the train? I got off the train at Ant-Man. When did you get off the train? Ant-Man.
I think I've seen them all, basically.
I wasn't actually off the train because in between movies like Ant-Man 2, Black Panther, The Marvels, Doctor Strange, there were good movies. Infinity War I thought was really strong, and Endgame had lots of strong moments and kind of wrapped everything up pretty good thematically. But I knew by the writing in Endgame and by the writing in some of the last few movies that they weren't doing as hot. And then Black Widow came out, and I was like,
catastrophe.
This is bad.
Yeah, Black Widow was really bad.
Yeah, Black Widow, and then I sort of lost touch. And Shang-Chi and the Eternals came out. And both of those were bad, and I was like,
those were the movies that gave you the reality check.
Did that go straight to streaming? I don't remember.
Nope.
It was in theaters.
It was
Did
in
we
theaters.
go watch it? I know this came out when we were in Virginia. Did we go watch it?
Shang-Chi? Yeah,
Did we?
No,
No,
we did not
I'm
watch
pretty
Shang-Chi in
No,
theaters.
we didn't go watch it.
I thought it came out straight to streaming because I thought we all watched it together.
Maybe we did.
You're
I
asking me to
think-
remember a
I
pointless
remember
time
us
in my
all
life.
watching it, and this is where Joseph was mad at the sword guy.
I know Black Widow. Black Widow came out under streaming because Scarlett Johansson had an
Yes.
issue with that.
Yes.
Shang-Chi might have come out for streaming as well.
But
yeah,
I
anyway,
think I'm technically not on the train, but I've seen all of them except for Deadpool. So the third
I
one.
haven't watched Quantumania.
it
I
was the
skipped that one.
last.
And
It was
Wakanda
the last
Forever.
couple of movies. It was the last couple of movies. I could tell by the writing the last couple of movies that they were on a downward spiral.
Wyatt, did you watch Quantumania?
No.
I watched
Yeah,
it because I remember
I
you came
skipped.
in when I was watching it, and you were like, "What?" And I was like,
No,
"Yeah,
on
yeah."
this list. So I even though I was off the train, I still was watching the movies. But when I say off the train, what I mean is I am not believing this is a good franchise anymore because I'm seeing where we're going with this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Like up until Ant-Man, I was like, I am on board. I want to see the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I just got bad movies, disappointment with a couple happy moments. That's it.
Yeah.
And with this list, I haven't even seen all these. I skipped Wakanda Forever because I've seen enough. Quantumania because I've seen enough. And the Marvels, obviously, because the entire internet told me not to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, if you had hard with the Ant-Man stuff, I'm sure all the stuff afterwards was like insane.
Yeah.
He's like
You
guy who can shrink.
Eternals.
He's like no to a guy who can shrink, and then
No.
there's people like throwing rings off their arms and dudes snapping their fingers with gems,
Or like
and turning people
you
into
have Harry
butterflies.
Styles.
I told you I
He's like,
enjoyed
"No,
Infinity
no."
War. I enjoyed the Spider-Mans, okay?
He's like, let's go back to the guy that can shrink.
Well, the thing is, I already had to like I said, to get to Thanos, Guardians of the Galaxy had to happen. They had to expand
Mhm.
into the wacky universe.
They did.
For Thanos to become what Thanos needed to be to introduce him correctly. So
Mhm.
I understand that. That doesn't change my opinion that it was a part of the downward spiral from what the original movies, the original saga up to that first and second Avengers movie had.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
It became formulaic.
Formulaic, and we were entering a different stratosphere. And I
Mhm.
didn't care for the stratosphere we were entering and leaving the other one behind. That's what I had a problem with. I didn't
Right.
want to leave the one that we were building so beautifully inside of.
Well, that's kind of that. It's more of a retrospective, and my guess is that the next segment's going to be a retrospective. But before that, we're going to thank the patron.
Thank you, Danita Beery.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Danita Beery has chosen to support us over on YouTube by joining memberships, which is only $3.99 a month. She gets an exclusive podcast that we do. It's called The Pre-Show. That's a clever name. The Pre-Show. We thought about that one for about 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's exclusive to members every single week. She also gets podcasts like this early and her name in the credits and personalized shout outs in the middle of podcasts. Her name in the credits of every single video on the channel, by the way. It's not just podcasts. It's every video we put out. So if you would like to support us, you would like to be credited in all of our video content, and I'll just give you a hint. Hey, sometimes we get a video that hits well over 100,000 views.
Oh, we got that one.
We got
Once?
the one.
Yeah.
No, we got the one, and we got more coming. So if you want to join us and have the world experience your name in the credits and be credited as a person who is supporting WiseWorks, and we'll do the legwork for you. We'll get your name out there. All you got to do is support us for the cost of less than a coffee from Starbucks. All right. $3.99 a month. You get the perks, you get the names. We appreciate it. Thank you, Danita Beery, for being such an awesome supporter of ours.
let me next screen. Oh, not that far.
No. All right.
Yeah, controlling it ain't so easy.
It's a good thing you know how to drive.
Right? Yeah.
Not like the Haitians in Ohio.
So I have a question, and this has been ringing in my head a little bit.
Okay.
Since Josh moved out, I've been wondering. I haven't seen your apartment yet.
Which I invited you guys, both of you.
Yeah.
And I said on Sunday you can come over if you'd like.
Yeah. So we will get to see your apartment. But I guess my question is, does it feel more lived in now that you're living with a person? Like a woman.
How so?
As opposed to Dirty Boys.
Well, I mean, as opposed, like, our decorating style is not decorating.
Oh.
Right? I know Josh's style is like sterile, nothing on anything.
Yeah, it's pretty sterile right now because we just had basically my stuff and a tiny bit of her stuff, and neither of us really had a lot of art, but we're working on it. We're slowly getting there.
But does it feel like she's like adding to your style, or is it still feel pretty separate and it's going to merge as time goes on?
I would say it's ours, but there's not a lot of style there still yet. You'll see.
So it'll come along.
Yeah, it'll come along.
All right, cool. I was just curious because you've been in there for a little while now. I didn't know. I just didn't know. I guess we'll see later tomorrow or not tomorrow, Sunday.
Yeah. And my question for both of you guys is I'm going to come to your homes. I'm going to see your space. So are you going to come to mine?
I'm busy. I'm busy. When are we supposed to be coming?
You come anytime you want, my dude.
Oh, I'm busy that day.
Well, Josh can come anytime he wants.
Wyatt, you got like a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, you better get your little booty cheeks up here.
I got this weekend, and this coming week, and then the next weekend. I'm kind of swamped right now.
Disappointment is what my heart feels. Disappointment in both of you.
Yeah.
Disappointment. Because I got a pretty cool crib, and you guys are missing out by not coming to see it.
I'll get to see it. Don't worry.
I don't like that he called it a crib.
A crib? Yeah.
I mean, you probably do have a crib since you got like a 1-year-old, but
I do have a crib in this house.
It's
sick, dude.
That doesn't count as your crib.
I paid for it.
So my second and last segment of this podcast is I've got more questions for you guys about movies.
Okay.
Seen any of these?
I've seen
Triple X.
I know I haven't seen the first Terminator. I've seen the second because you made me watch it.
Wow, that's not Terminator.
Then no, I haven't seen any.
That's
of
Commando.
It says
I don't
right
know.
There. It says
it there. It says Commando.
I haven't seen Hard Target. I haven't seen Commando.
Okay, you got to watch.
The X. The Triple
You have
X.
to watch Hard Target. You really do.
All right. Let's get to what are we doing here?
In the past, and I kind of formatted these going from left to right in sequence of when they came out. 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Yep.
There was a very clear understanding, I feel like, of action movies.
Okay.
Where they both took themselves seriously, but they were so over the top that people could laugh at them as well.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody got offended that if you laughed at their action movies, because everybody knew that they were wacky and they were over the top. That's not how reality is.
Yes.
Moving past the 2000s into the 2010s, we see significantly less and less wacky. I was when in searching in the early 2000s, I saw a couple of the really wacky action movies,
Okay.
And I'm not talking about action comedies. I'm talking these are serious nuts to butts action movies.
Okay.
And they take themselves seriously.
Yes.
But they're funny.
Okay.
They're funny to watch.
All right.
Yeah. There's nothing in after the 2010s. They're gone.
No, not true. Not true.
No?
Not true. Oh, is this the part where we get to discuss it?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I think they're back in the 80s, I think is kind of when this started, where they did start creating this action movie that was so over the top that it was comical. They started in the 80s.
And I didn't even put over the top in this list.
They didn't do it as much in the 90s, I feel like, but they did still do it here and there.
There's so much in the 90s. and the issue, I know what you're thinking. The issue with in the 90s, the over-the-top action movies look like 80s movies. I thought Hard Target was from the 80s, but it was like 97 or something.
Okay. But then you get into the early 2000s and you had movies like the Triple X. And it got people at this point expected those kind of movies to just be there. And so we are still having these movies, but we call them Fast and Furious now. And so people are like, oh, it's a Fast and Furious movie. They don't think of it as a comical action movie anymore, but that's what it is. It just is what it is.
See, I feel like Fast and Furious is kind of maybe monopolized and forced out the other charming over-the-top kind of movies because of how over-the-top it is.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you can do as much of the big
there is. Look at the shark movies today. Megalodon. You have a ton of shark movies that fit under this category. And I think we kind of have expected it so much that we don't look at those movies and realize that they're there, but they're there. I mean, you didn't even think about the shark movies.
Well, hold on.
So many.
Because my thesis is not incorrect. As the movies, in the sheer number of these movies from the 80s to the early 2000s, makes it look like they're extinct in modern day. You've brought up some really good cases, but those are few and far between compared to the sheer number of films that we got during the, I guess, this period, like 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing like there's not nearly as many of movies like this. And I guess the question, avoiding the obvious ones, of like the ones that Josh has mentioned, which are almost like, especially nowadays, they're not doing super great in the box office. Why do you think we're not making these anymore?
I honestly think.
Why do you think we're not making them as frequently?
This is what I think. I think it's a shift in the directors and producers in Hollywood's approach. That's what I think, because it's not just the action over the top genre. It's literally comes down to comedy itself. Rom-coms are not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
What happened to the rom-com? This is what I think it is. I think
writers can't write comedy anymore. We've seen it on SNL.
Okay, but I think before the writers, before cancel culture, before Me Too, before any of this stuff, it was happening. And this is where it was. It was Hollywood decided that they were hard genre-ing everything, basically. Which means everyone wants to make a really good, impactful movie. They take it seriously, and that means the movie comes across as it's taking itself seriously. The action films wanted to do the same thing, and they wanted to capture that over-the-top magic, but they didn't know how to do it in a way that allowed people to laugh at it. So it comes across as flat or unimportant. It's like the remake of Terminator. You know what I mean? It was just as wild as the old ones, but it took itself way too seriously. It didn't have the same approach that the Terminators of old did. You know what I mean? And so I think it comes down to the producers and the intention of the films that they were making. Everybody wanted to be the interesting director with the hat, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to be nobody knew how to, or I guess in some ways comedy might have been a little too frightening for modern creators. An example of someone that tried to do a comedy action over the top film that didn't work out, and they said when they were making it, this is probably not going to work because the genre doesn't work anymore, was Burt Kreischer's The Machine, right? He literally tried that old style of over the top comedy, and it didn't work.
But I'm not talking about necessarily comedy. I'm talking about
the action.
I'm talking about over the top action.
Yes,
to where it becomes comedic.
I think
it's unbelievable, but it's so fun to watch.
I think action filmmakers wanted to do action, and they didn't want to live in the world of comedic unbelievability, except for a few like Michael Bay, which I think he takes himself very seriously. But you can't not watch Transformers and feel like this is way over the top. It's just fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I want to add on to that because this is kind of right in line. And when I preface this, I don't want to say that this is like a huge thing that's keeping these movies from being made, but it is maybe a small portion of what's keeping these movies being made. Is I think with streaming, there's a bit of a shift in what Hollywood is making today. I think back then there was a lot more movies being made than there was like even shows, because it was harder to get into, and you had to make a pilot and then your show had to be picked up, and you did multiple season shows, where now because of streaming there's a lot of shows that are coming out compared to movies. I'm not saying movies aren't coming out, but like I think if you looked at the amount of shows back then compared to now because of streaming, there's a shift in how Hollywood's making things. But
and
that's
the attitude,
a small portion of it.
I think you're right. I think the attitude could reflect that. Is like when you're making a movie like Roadhouse or Commando or something like that, your attitude towards, okay, how do we make this the most entertaining for the 103 120 minutes or whatever that we have, where it needs to be high octane. Dudes need to be ripping each other's throats out. Cars need to be exploding. Women need their tops taken off. It needs to be, just a thrill ride, right?
Yeah.
And you're producing a bunch of these movies. And I think you're right. Now that the entertainment is coming straight into our homes, they're like, we need people to be on our platform longer.
Yes.
And how do we do that? Well, we can't just drop a movie.
Well,
we need to drop a show.
I think we need to crack open the baby oil again and start lathering up these guys and make them greasy, and maybe that'll start a revolution again.
More baby oil.
Yeah. Get out that coconut oil.
I mean, people liked that in Deadpool and Wolverine. People liked the baby oil. They want Hugh covered in the oil.
Yeah. But okay, so there are examples in modern filmmaking of an attempt at this. You brought up Roadhouse. Look, as much as you don't like it, Doug Liman tried to do that over-the-top action vibe with the remake of Roadhouse. He tried to do that, and
it felt more serious to me. But
no, it didn't. It didn't. Look at the villain. The villain was silly.
It was goofy. I'm agreeing. It was goofy, but he was trying to make it a serious version of Roadhouse compared to the original. And it wasn't, even though Connor's doing this, I think in a sense they think that's supposed to be serious.
I don't think
I think it was a little bit tongue in cheek, but the issues with that movie were more that it had pacing issues, it had plot issues, and it had writing issues. The dialogue was so bad at times, and it never conveyed it never helped you learn more about the characters.
But to be fair, the old movies of the 80s did the same thing. There was just so many of them that there was more that hit.
I would disagree. I would say the 80s made a concerted effort with characters to do at least a little bit of character work for each character, to the point where oftentimes the dialogue felt bad because it was too much exposition. They're like, hey, I'm Rand and I'm kind of a big deal around here. Right? Or they'd be like, oh my gosh, that's Dalton. He's kind of a big deal in bars.
Mm-hmm.
It was exposition, right? And it often felt like a little bit too much. These days, they almost avoid that type of stuff because they're scared to tell you about their characters, but they want you to care about their characters. And it leads to all sorts of just misunderstanding and people not wanting to watch the movie and not understanding why. It's like, why don't I care about these characters? Well, you don't know anything about them. At least with the previous example, you know that guy believes that he's the baddest guy around.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to take it at what we were talking about way earlier in the podcast. I brought it up where I think some of these movies, they didn't just have now these examples are one-off movies. I'm pretty sure they're all of them are one-off.
I think there's like another Commando and
there's a couple of Triple X, but the first Triple X is what you're referencing here.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say is there was a lot of these kind of movies that started off action, but not comical, over the top action, like Die Hard. I wouldn't say the first Die Hard was like over the top, or even like Rambo. As far as action
movies go, those were pretty tame.
They were tame, and then they made a second one, they made a third one because they worked, and somehow they became over the top, and I don't know what brought them to where they are and what we think of as Rambo now, like Last Blood or
the
first,
sequels.
The sequel,
they kept making them because they were making money.
Yeah,
and they had to they had to do better than the last one, right? As far as new stuff in the new movie, to make you not have to watch basically the same thing over again. And so they almost kept like one-upping each other, and that's where we got the culture of these outrageous action movies. The action movie age of the 80s and 90s, even the early 2000s, was insane because they kept having to do more than the last one. When Die Hard and Rambo were both good, and they weren't outdoing each other.
Couldn't there be a argument to be made that these kind of movies just fizzled out because inflation got too expensive to make them, and there wasn't enough money in the return to make movies like this? Couldn't it be as simple as that?
We could argue to say that Marvel superhero movies are the modern versions of these movies.
Well, I
had a very similar thought. That's not wrong. I would say that the over the top, the budgets were probably pretty tough. Lots of stunt work, lots of practical effects.
Also, I think the market just gets tired of these. Like it's the same that we talked about. It's why Kevin Costner is insisting on bringing back Westerns when we know the genre's dead. Yeah, we've
seen them all.
There's a few Westerns that could work, right? But Kevin Costner's like, I'm going to do Westerns. And Horizon has been a huge flop.
Every once in a while you get a good one, like that one that was about like...
Or if Quentin Tarantino makes it. But
there's... Kevin Costner and Viggo Mortensen are the only ones making Westerns these days.
But what I'm saying is the Western genre died, all right? The market was done with the Western genre.
Yeah.
It's very possible the 80s action flick,
it's done. I think it's done.
The market no longer had an interest for it.
So I guess the question becomes, should people try to do anything like this now, or should we like with the Western stuff, I firmly believe every once in a while a good Western can come out, but we can live in the ones that exist
Mm-hmm.
and have plenty of fun.
This is what I think.
And I think the same here. We can live in these movies that exist and have plenty of fun, and we don't necessarily need new ones.
I think if you can make an 80s action flick style film for around $30 million, then you can be profitable. I think it would need to live. And that's what I'm saying. It might not exist because you might not be able to do that. But it needs to exist the same way the horror genre stays afloat. Horror genre is around, not because it's profitable. There has not been a horror film in a long time that has reached $500 million. All right. The only reason horror stays alive is because they keep them budgets tame. You know what I mean? And when I'm saying tame, I'm talking $15 to $30 million.
Yeah.
They do not break out of that budget for horror flicks for any reason. So if you can find a happy middle ground budget to stay within the same realm that horror has done for the 80s style action flicks, then you can make it a profit. If you are bloating an action film up to $100-200 million, you are guaranteeing loss of money. Guaranteeing, because the market is not big enough to sustain that. The interest market is not big enough to sustain that.
There might be people that disagree, but I don't know that people are going and watching the big action movie anymore. Like they used to. I mean, I think people will come out for a John Wick or for a Top Gun.
What did people go to the theaters to watch this year?
Dune. That was
last year. But yes, Dune, which is a very serious high concept, right? Planet of the Apes, which
did not make its money back.
It did, actually.
Did it?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, okay, good.
The comedy superhero genre with Deadpool, but that's just because of Deadpool, all right? The right kids animated film, people will show up for. So last year was Mario. This year was Inside Out 2. The right one.
Was that last year?
Yeah.
Kids will show up for.
Oh, Sonic 3, I think, is going to probably hit $1 billion.
So if you look at what people showed up for, and here's the thing, Alien Romulus did pretty good. I don't know if it's made its budget back because I think the budget was kind of high. But as far as money goes, it did pretty good. I just don't know if their budget was bloated or not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's the same thing that we do. You have to test the market. You have to do the exact same thing we do when we're creating a YouTube video. What's the ceiling on potential views for a specific niche? You know what I mean? It's what you have to consider if you're getting into a market. So with the movie genre, you have to do the same thing, right? If you adjust expectations, you will know what a success is, and you can continue going down that road, and you have to shift with the market.
But I think Hollywood has a bad habit these days of learning the wrong lesson.
Yes.
So
100%.
when the superhero genre comes out and they're seeing that it's working, they keep making more movies exactly like that, and they get worse and worse, and they get more and more childish.
Yes.
I think Godzilla -1 could be a great example to Hollywood of what to do with a movie, but I think they will somehow learn the wrong lesson.
They'll just be monster movies.
Well, no, it won't even be that. They've already got that problem.
Yes.
It will be, I don't know what it'll be. It'll be like, it will go back to the hide the monster as much as possible, hide the giant monster as much as possible, but with none of the entertaining character work, and none of the story and plot elements that were there in that film. But they'll be the budgets will be bloated. That won't be the trend. The trend won't be, here's a giant monster movie for 15 mil.
Right. No, it's, here's a giant monster movie for 250.
You barely see the monster. At least with the $250 million monster movies that Hollywood's putting out, at least you see the monsters the whole time.
All right, so let's just do a quick brain worm for probably the next 3 movies that's coming out this year that are big ones. All right, let's see what we're sitting at. You got Gladiator 2. That's going to be a big one this year. Okay,
could be.
You got Joker 2, Folie à Deux.
That one will be pretty big.
And then you have Wicked in November. All right, those are the 3 big heavy hitters for this year. All right.
I think Sonic 3 is going to be bigger than Wicked.
Probably.
Think? Yeah.
I think Wicked will be a movie for,
white women.
The women, so they'll go watch it. It'll be bigger than you think.
You also don't think it'll be that Hunter. Big. You have Mufasa, the Lion King, right? We got a couple.
I don't think either of those will be very big. I think Wicked will come close, but I don't think it'll be as big as something like Barbie.
No, I'm not saying it's going to get that big.
I think women can look at that trailer and be like, "Eh."
You think the women are saying "nah" to Wicked?
Yes.
You really think so?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I think so.
Apparently,
I haven't heard any buzz about the trailer. I haven't seen any articles. I haven't seen.
Okay,
nothing.
But look at our channel. It's a consistent viewed video we have on our channel. Like it's one of the consistently viewed videos.
I didn't say that it's not going to be big. I said I don't think it's going to be as big as some of the others you mentioned.
Oh, I'm not saying it's going to be Barbie, but we'll see.
I think it'll probably make a profit, but I think of the ones that we're getting, Folie à Deux is going to be the biggest. Either followed by or superseded by Sonic 3.
Where do you guys think Mufasa the Lion King hits? Do you think it shows
up? It's going to get like no views.
What do you guys think Kraven the Hunter is going to do coming off of?
I think that one might do a little bit better than people think, because it is the next superhero movie coming.
Unless it does the exact same thing Madam Web does, and the first people that watched it said, "This is a horrible movie," and no one, like people. What happened with Madam Web? People were getting refunds for their tickets before
people
they
don't
went
realize
to the theater.
Word of mouth is a two-edged sword, cuts both ways.
Does it?
It's funny they sold Madam Web sold tickets, and then they had to give the money back.
Yeah. You can make a movie like Maverick with word of mouth, and you can break a movie like Madam Web.
Yeah, with word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But no, I think to wrap up this conversation about the 80s action flick, my position is that the market's no longer there unless they can do something with the budget. I think it's as simple as that.
It had its time, but it's no longer that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've moved on. We're on to bigger and less interesting things.
Well, I mean, we might circle back around, but give it quite a few years to circle back around.
Yeah. I think we're getting good action movies, but not those kinds of action movies where John Wick is over the top, but it's clearly a very different kind of vibe.
It's very serious over the top.
It's more serious over the top fun rather than sort of corny fun that those were. Yeah. And then I don't have any more after this. I just wanted to kind of end it. What's you guys' favorite X-Men movie? I've been watching some X-Men movies.
It's the one that I think people might say is the worst. And I don't really care for I don't care for
Dark Phoenix?
No.
Origins Wolverine. X-Men Origins Wolverine. I would agree. That's probably my favorite. I was about
X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah. The first Origins one.
Really?
That's my favorite.
I freaking love it. I like the love interest that he has.
Yeah.
I like the vibe of Wolverine. I don't care for the end, with the big climax fight end, but everything up to it, like his brother, the surgery that he has to get the antimanium. I think it's all fun to me. I mean, he sits on a motorcycle, and that thing just like, just dips down because he's got new weight. I just gotta say, it's fun. I freaking love X-Men Origins Wolverine. I don't know what to tell you. He becomes a lumberjack in that film.
I love the enthusiasm.
It's because I feel like I have to defend myself because everyone.
To me,
I'm right here with you. I was about
not
to
with
say the
X-Men.
same thing.
I like a lot of that movie. I think there's a lot of really good ideas in that one, and there's a lot of heart in it too.
Yes,
A lot of good characters.
Yeah,
a lot of good characters. Yeah.
But I don't know. I do like X2. I think that's one of the strongest of the original 3.
Mm-hmm.
That is the strongest of the original 3.
Oh yeah.
X2. And then I really love Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think it's
Peter
got
Dinklage was a good character in that movie.
Yeah, I think all the characters have really solid writing and character work. They all make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Everything the characters do follows within kind of the way that they would act, and I think James McAvoy knocks it out of the park. Usually it's Hugh Jackman, but
James McAvoy honestly knocks anything out of the park that he does.
I think what's his name, who plays Magneto?
Yeah,
he
Killer.
takes it.
Can't remember his name.
He takes it in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
In First Class. He's of the two. I love his acting in the first movie. In the second movie, it's James McAvoy, 100%.
My favorite X-Men movie is probably The Umbrella Academy.
No,
I don't know what the crap the Umbrella Academy is.
Yeah.
Why did they think we're just gonna do?
Cool.
Why did they think we were like
it?
They were like, we're just gonna do a side quest idea of like what X-Men is.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea.
Weird.
It's kind they're like messed up X-Men.
Yeah.
Which
Stupid.
is fun. The first season was fun. The second season was meh. I heard the third season was bad, and the fourth season was terrible.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
looking forward to Stranger Things season 5, guys. Really looking forward to that one.
Me too.
I'm really
looking forward to that so much.
Season 4 was so awesome with
it was
Vecna
good.
and everything, and where they left off. I'm so looking forward to season 5 of Stranger Things. High hopes, but with that, I think we should bounce.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We love you. Bye bye.